Hi, and welcome to the Successful Atlassian Cloud Migration webinar hosted by Expium. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm a consultant at Expium. We're happy to have you here today. We're going to cover a lot of material. One thing that I want to mention first by way of announcement is one of the probably most valuable things you're going to get out of this webinar today is we have a resource list that we're going to post in the chat at the end of the webinar. As you can imagine, if you're considering doing a cloud migration or decided that you're going to do a cloud migration, a lot of what's involved with that winds up being a pretty large research project. And what we've done with this resource list is we've compiled about 20 links. A majority of them are really good resources that Atlassian provides that answers a lot of questions you would have. There's a smaller handful of them that are additional Expium items that are videos, but that would have you set for most of the research, most if not all of the research that you would want to be doing. So, and I just wanted to let you know that in advance. Also, I will be referring to some of those items as we talk through today, but I want you to feel relaxed and able to just kick back and just listen to the material and take it in without feeling like you have to take copious notes or copy down a bunch of URLs, because you're going to get all of that at the end. So, and like I said, that's probably worth the price of admission right there. Okay, so jumping right on in. Why is this even a topic? Well, as some of you may know, Atlassian has decided to deprecate the server product. And what we have here on this slide is a timeline around the events that they have scheduled for that. And you can see that some of them have passed already, but a lot of people are aware or are becoming aware that support for the server products is going to end here coming up in early 2024. So one of the things that people ask when they find out about this is, do I have to get off of server? Or and the answer is no. Sometimes people wonder, is server just going to stop working for me? And that's not the case. You can continue to use server. It's just that after that last date there, February 2nd, there's not going to be any additional support coming from Atlassian in terms of updates or security updates. It will still work. So you can continue to use it that way as long as you're comfortable using it that way, but there's nothing going to shut it down. Another reason that we're discussing this today is because Atlassian is putting their priority development on their cloud platform. When new features come out, Atlassian gives all of their attention to cloud first. And between cloud and server, well, and as far as when you would get off of server, you've basically got two options. You can go to cloud or you can go to data center, and we'll be getting more detailed into that later. Between cloud and, say, data center, cloud gets all of the new features first. Cloud has a lot more features out of the box than the server and data center products do. So for those reasons, the cloud platform is really appealing. So that's another reason we're talking about that, because a lot of people are just looking at that saying, you know, that's what we think we want to do. That's what we're going to do. We're going to look to do. One of the items on our resource list in terms of this is Atlassian published a cloud roadmap, and it gives more detail into what's on this slide. So that will be available to you. Here at Expium, in terms of migrations, we've done a lot of migrations of all kinds, large and small. And so we have expertise that we can bring to you. for that if you should need assistance. So let's talk about what products are in scope. As we go through this material today, basically we're going to take a questions approach. We've anticipated what a lot of the common questions are and what questions you may have. So we're going to answer a lot of those. And one of the questions is, well, what is in scope in terms of what's going to be available in cloud, what isn't? And as you can see, a majority of the products are available in cloud. You know, all of the Jira products, Jira software, Jira Core, which is actually Jira Work Management in cloud, Jira Service Management, Confluence, Bitbucket. If you're familiar with Crowd and the server arena in cloud, Access is the replacement product for that. Bamboo is being replaced with Bitbucket pipelines. What's out of scope and what Atlassian is not supporting moving to cloud are Fisheye and Crucible. There's not a lot. Those aren't really in use a whole lot anyway. The marketplace apps are also in scope. There's as many, if not more, marketplace apps for cloud now than is for server and data center. Okay, so let's look at the platforms and the options that you have. If you're on server and you're knowing you're not going to continue to use it, you're going to move off of that, you've got two options. You can go to the cloud or you can go to data center. Moving to data center is a relatively comparatively an easier switch than cloud, but the licensing on data center is quite a bit more costly. So that's something to take into consideration. Cloud winds up being appealing for a lot of reasons. So let's look at some of the differences here. And this slide is a comparison, and it's really not that there are stark differences between the two. But as far as scale, data center, how many users you're going to have is unlimited. On cloud, you can have up to 20,000 per instance, and you can have unlimited instance. So that gets close to being, unlimited as well. And really, most companies aren't going to get anywhere near the 20,000 user number anyway. So in terms of scale, in 99% of cases, data center doesn't really have a whole lot to offer over cloud in terms of that. In terms of reliability, Atlassian promises a 99.9% service level agreement availability. If you're going to do data center, then it's just up to you. You're managing that, and if that's what you want to do, if something goes wrong, then your staff will deal with it. In cloud, you've got Atlassian taking care of that for you. In terms of security and compliance, on data center, it's your policies. On cloud, Atlassian has put a lot of policies in place that are necessary, and they're serving thousands of countries the world over in cloud. So they've worked through what are the concerns for most companies, and they put that in place. So that's in place for you. In terms of governance, again, on data center, it's up to you. In cloud, we have Atlassian managed here, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do your own governance, but Atlassian has a level of governance in place themselves that they have put in place on cloud, so they can protect the integrity and the performance of the platform, but you can still do your own governance in terms of your policies within your company and how things are handled. In terms of apps and extensibility, cloud really has more than data center. I mean, they're kind of equal, but most the companies that create the add-ons focus on cloud. One of the things, if you are concerned about security or reliability in the cloud, Atlassian has this program that they call Cloud Fortified. Cloud Fortified is a sort of a certification or a stamp of approval that Atlassian gives that a certain add-on will meet Atlassian's standards in order to be marked as Cloud Fortified. One of the items that is on the resource list that we're going to give you is a link to the add-ons that are Cloud Fortified. So that can be helpful. And with that said, I wouldn't necessarily discount any apps that aren't Cloud Fortified. There's a lot of apps out there. They're all really good. But if you have an app that's going to be used around data that's particularly sensitive or mission critical, you could use that Cloud Fortified classification to help you make some decisions around that and maybe get some more confidence in the reliability and the security of that. Okay. A couple of the other resources that we're going to give you here is we're going to give you a link to a page that Atlassian has provided that has comprehensive info about data center. So if you're evaluating and making a decision, that's going to be really useful for you. Also, a resource to a page that has information comparing data center to server. If you're on server and you're considering data center, what's the difference? They're really close to being the same, but that'll help you identify any factors that are different there. All right. So why are we seeing this trend toward cloud-based products? As you can see here, this slide references a study that Gartner did talking about how 80% of workloads will shift to the cloud by 2025. And even without Gartner saying that, it's something that probably all of us are seeing in terms of applications for enterprise business, smaller business, even personal applications. We're seeing them being hosted in the cloud with a subscription model. In a lot of cases, if you are wanting to have an application or a tool that you want to be hosted on premise, on your own server installed, those are getting harder and harder to find. And so there's some reasons why the cloud platform is appealing and companies like that. We're going to talk in a little bit here in more detail about what some of those are. And additionally, for the companies involved, they like the cloud platform with a subscription model. It helps them, fund their continuing support of the product. So it just seems to be a good option for all parties involved. If and when you go to the cloud with Atlassian, there are tier levels. So let's talk about those. This is something that doesn't exist in server. And so we've got free, standard, premium, and enterprise. And so what's really nice about this is it lets you get started on a smaller scale and grow with it if you want to. The free tier, as long as you have 10 users or less, it truly is free and will remain free as long as you have 10 users or less. And an additional nice thing about that is a majority of the add-ons for cloud in that free tier are also free. And when I say majority, I mean like 95% plus have that free tier. So that's real nice because you have access to all of them for free to either use or play with. Once you get into standard, that's over 10 users, that's when you get into paying subscription fee based on how many users you have. And with standard and premium and enterprise, you're paying subscription fees based on how many users you have. But with the higher up tiers, you can see that additional features become available. So premium is very appealing to a lot of companies because of the features that are included with it that are not included in standard. In premium, you have automation across all projects. You have a sandbox. You have advanced roadmaps that you don't have in standard. And enterprise takes it even further by adding access. One of the things you'll notice here at the bottom of the slide, it's illustrating Atlassian Access. For free standard and premium, access is a subscription. You have to pay for it. But if you're at the enterprise tier, it's included. So that's one of the benefits of being at the enterprise tier. And in terms of the resources that we're going to provide for you on that resource list, we've got a page that gives a detailed comparison of the tiers. And there's also a couple of pages that give you detail on the cloud pricing for Jira software, and also another link for the cloud pricing for Jira Service Management. And the reason for that is, you might think that they would be similar. Actually, the pricing structure for Jira Service Management is different from Jira software. It costs a little bit more. So that's something you're going to want to look at if you're going to want to use Jira Service Management. So on licensing, if and when you come to the point to where you have questions about licensing in the cloud, and you will, because it can be kind of involved, please feel free to reach out to Expium. We can help you with that. What Atlassian does is they incentivize partners to handle that. Atlassian really doesn't want to deal with doing the licensing directly. So they have us as a partner provide that for you. It's at no cost to you. They pay us to do it. And so that's really nice because you have a person you can get on the phone and talk to, a live body anytime. We have people here that deal specifically and only with that. They're experts at licensing. And like I said, free to you, no cost to you. And it's nice to just have that contact, that relationship with a partner. Okay. So moving on. Looking at Access a little closer here. If you're familiar with Crowd on server or data center, Atlassian Access is basically the cloud equivalent of Crowd. And Access gives you the ability to connect to your Active Directory and connect to whatever source you're managing your users, and it gives you some additional features in terms of single sign-on. You can do two-factor authentication if you want, and if you don't have it, you have to your Jira admins will have to manage your users and your user provisioning themselves. Access allows that to happen automatically, coming from your Active Directory or whatever provider you're using, and allows your Jira administrators to focus their time on other things. So the more users you have in your instance or in your organization, the more Access becomes valuable to you, because the more users you have, the more administrative overhead it would be if you would try to manage those without this tool. Okay. Real briefly, Expium. Let's talk about Expium. Expium is Expium is a platinum Atlassian solutions provider. And basically what that means is that Expium has had to meet some requirements that Atlassian sets in terms of how many certified consultants that we have. And that platinum partner level is the highest partner level that is available with Atlassian. And so what that means is that Expium brings a lot of expertise to the table, and we bring the experience of a group of consultants rather than just a smaller number of consultants. In terms of consulting, we consult around a variety of things like migrations, Agile at scale, Jira service management. So we have consulting services around all of those topics. If you should need custom development, Expium is also out in the marketplace. We have some add-ons out there. Additionally, we have a sister company called Oasis Digital. And sometimes that can come into play because sometimes a customer or client will have a scenario where they will want their own custom front end built to be presented as a front end and then use Jira as a back end. We've done that in those cases. We've done that a handful of times. If anyone would need that, we could help you with that. And then again, in terms of licensing, we can help you with all of your licensing questions, and that allows you to also just have that phone a friend type of relationship with a partner. All right, let's talk about the benefits of being in cloud. In cloud, when it comes to extensibility and add-ons, there are more add-ons for cloud. When these companies that make these add-ons look at providing them for cloud versus server or data center, that focus is going to cloud. So there's more of them there. There are also add-ons that have those two versions, and those companies, the functionality and usefulness of them are better in cloud. So that makes the add-ons in cloud appealing. That's one thing. Additionally, they're typically, just because of the nature of the cloud platform, they're easier to implement. Implementing some of these integrations in server is more involved because it's in your own ecosystem. In cloud, the path is already laid, it's set up for you, and oftentimes a project administrator can even set those up and get them configured and running. So that's really nice, and that's appealing. Another benefit, and this is the big one that I think comes to mind for everybody, is a reduction in costs. When you are looking at the cost of housing, purchasing all the equipment for running and maintaining your own data center, and paying all of the employees to do that, that's a really high cost. And server allows you to not have to take all that on yourself for a reduced expense. So that's what's really appealing to a lot of companies. It allows them to just offload that. And again, with the scaling, being able to start small and move up. So that's appealing. One of the resources that we have here is in the resource list that we're going to give you is a cloud savings calculator. And let me see if I can get to that. I should be able to get to that because this is a really cool tool. This is Atlassian provided. And what it does is it allows you to do some calculations just to see what this would cost for you. So say you're looking at using Jira software, you can select that, you can put in how many users, say 300, and then you can add another product. So you're going to have Confluence 2. Let's see here. Actually, this is helping you figure out the pricing for server. So you can see so you can compare to the cloud expense. then you can do estimate. And it's going to show you what the cost would be in a self-managed scenario versus the cloud. Now, you might think this is a marketing tool that Atlassian is just trying to make, skew some results. It really isn't. They give you the ability here, and this is really, really nice. You can edit the assumptions. You can go in and you can change things, like if you can change and indicate how many administrators you have, change whatever the salary may be, and then recalculate that. So Atlassian provides that tool that can be useful for your research as you do that, and we have a link to that in the resources that we're providing for you. More benefits in terms of cloud. There are licensing improvements, and basically what that means is licensing falls under one umbrella for you, meaning you don't have a variety of licenses splintered off and you're having to manage multiple payments. It gets all wrapped up into one payment. That's nice. And also with licensing, the way Atlassian has structured the higher tiers, the premium and enterprise, it eliminates the need for a lot of extra licenses and add-ons because a lot of functionality is provided out of the box at those tiers. Some examples of that would be advanced roadmaps is a road mapping and planning tool that's available in premium and enterprise. Access is available in cloud, eliminating costs around user provisioning, single sign-on, auditing, compliance, etc. Another benefit is when you make this this move, it's a great opportunity to do some cleanup. Migration is a great time to clean things up before or after migration. You can go through your data, get rid of some things that you don't need. You can make a fresh start. It's also just a great time to make some changes. If you need to make some changes in procedures or the way things are configured and it's hard to do just to make happen, when you do a migration, it's a really good time to make that happen. It's usually easier to do that in that case. You can leave your old mistakes behind and start fresh. Migration is also a great time to revisit your governance. You need to have a process that helps users, all of your users of your Atlassian products, because cloud will be prompting your users to try new products all the time, and you need a governance process in place so you have a way to evaluate those requests. In the resources that we're providing for you, there's a governance webinar video that Expium has done that can give you some more details on that. More differences in terms of marketplace apps. There's some differences with marketplace apps. It's not really prohibitive for most companies, but some aspects that you might want to consider is in terms of those apps, you may want to look at where the data is stored, depending on the sensitivity of it. Some apps store and work with data directly within your Atlassian instance. Some of them have the data hosted elsewhere on another server. So your InfoSec team may be interested in looking at that if you're dealing with anything that's sensitive. User and group management is different in cloud. It's basically different in terms of the user interface. It's not really a stumbling block, but basically the point here is to realize that when you go to cloud and you can't expect to go to and find the same user options and interface in cloud as what exists in server, because it's structured differently in cloud. There are more levels of administrators, and it's just a different interface. It's not difficult. It's just you need to be aware that change is going to be something that you're going to need to look at and get familiar with. There are some differences in the user interface when you get to cloud. Let me find an example to show you here. Show you what I mean real quickly. I mean, what we do is we actually have whole webinars around this topic alone. So, so I'm just going to really just touch on some general ideas here to give you an idea. One thing is this is the issue view screen. This is very different from what you're used to in server. And what they've done is they've made it, Atlassian has made it cleaner, easier to use. They've tried to design it such that it takes fewer clicks for you to get done what you need to get done. And also a motivation behind this is they've designed this such that this presentation here can adapt well to a variety of different sizes of screens and devices. So let's just look at some of what are the differences here. You'll notice that there's fewer buttons. Usually up here you have buttons for your workflows. What they've done here is, and I really like this, is here's a item that is an indicator for what status your item is in, but it's also the control that you use to transition to a different status. And it shows the statuses that are available to you. It also shows the names of the transitions. So if you've named your transitions well, it just gives a lot of context for the user, makes this very intuitive. That's a change. Another thing that they've done is they've done what is inline editing, where you just click on something to edit it. And in a lot of these fields, you've got the values right there. You can just click on the value that you want, and click. You're entering data without having to click an edit button to go into edit mode, change the fields, and then click save. That is something that it may seem a little odd at first, but once you get used to it, you'll like it a lot. Let's see here. Let's look at a task board, a software task board. In cloud, when you click on a card, you have this pop-up window that's a little bit different from what you see in server. A lot of people really like this. That's different. Let's also look at some Confluence things real quickly, and then we'll move on. Some differences here when you're editing a page. There are differences around the way that you edit tables. You notice here at the top, you have less of a toolbar, and that's because a lot of those tools are just implemented down in the page and in the items themselves. So for example, in terms of this table, the controls and the way that you manipulate the table are right here in the table. That takes a little bit getting used to, but it's convenient. You've got table options right here. And there's also, let's see, you can control the size of your table. They've also got these sizing buttons with these arrows where you can change the relative size of your content on your page. Layouts are the same type of deal. You've got, you see we've got a layout here, you've got layout controls here at the bottom, and we've got another double arrow item here that controls the relative layout on the screen. You can also do that with a table. I'm not able to show that to you right now because it's within a layout section, but tables have this control to modify the width as well. So those are some things to get used to, but they're all things that Atlassian has done a lot of thinking on. They're very well thought out. They're not done just for the sake of making changes. They're done to make the experience and the user experience easier and quicker. In the resources that we're going to provide for you, we've got a couple of videos, what to expect in terms of the user interface after moving to the cloud for Jira, and another one that's the same type of content in terms of what to expect for Confluence. They aren't long videos, they're about 15 minutes each, but those are really helpful. You definitely want to check those out. Okay. Another difference is Jira automation. Automation for Jira is something that's included in cloud. It hasn't always been included in server. It's historically been an add-on that you pay for. In cloud, you have project level automation, regardless of what tier you have. Once you get into premium and enterprise tiers, you have automation that spans over across your instance. You can do automation between projects. So that's a difference in the way that that's included, and that's a really nice tool. If you're in cloud, you definitely need to look at automation. Check that out. It's designed to be easy to use. It's intuitive. It's got a great interface. It's an option that you can turn on and off in terms of if you want your project administrators to have access to it, but it's a great tool. And in our resource list, we've got a 10-minute demo video on automation in cloud. So take a look at that. Another difference is in cloud, we have advanced roadmaps that is included in Premier and Enterprise. In terms of road mapping, there's a simpler road mapping tool in cloud at the project level that doesn't exist in server. But then additionally, with the upper level tiers, as I mentioned, you have advanced roadmaps available. That is a great tool. Let me see if I have an example of that here at my disposal. I think I do. Let's take a look here. This is what advanced roadmaps looks like. It's going to fill itself out a little bit better there as the screen refreshes. If you want to do enterprise-wide planning, this is a great tool. Be sure to look at this if you're in the upper level tiers that include it before you look at buying an add-on to do planning. It's got a lot of great features. You can set start and end dates for your items. You can set dependencies. You can do a lot of conditional formatting with colors. It's a great tool. And so take a look at the resource that we're going to provide for you on that. Another difference in cloud is work management projects. This is a new Jira Work Management. This is an extension of what could have been called Jira Core in server. And let's just look at that real quick as well. Basically, a work management project is geared towards business teams that aren't so oriented towards software development. And there's features in here there's quite a few features in here that are an extension of Jira Core that aren't available in Jira Core. One of them here is a list view. And this is basically kind of like a spreadsheet view. And what it does is it allows you can edit values in the cells here. And you can also change status. This is really useful for just looking at and changing data real quickly without having to go and look at individual issues. There's a task board. It's not as full featured as what you would have in Jira software. but that's there. That's a nice new feature. It's got a calendar built in. It's got a timeline tool, which is kind of a road mapping tool. Again, it's not as sophisticated as advanced road maps or the project road mapping tool in Jira software, but it's great tool. It's not there. That's not something that's included in core on server or data center. And let's see, you can also create your own forms with work management projects. So there's just a lot of nice features there. That's a really good example of something in cloud that has a lot of extra features that you're not going to have in server or data center. There are team managed projects. I'll touch on this briefly. If within your company you're wanting to do something that's kind of a self-service model, you can have team managed projects turned on. That allows teams to just create their project if they want to organize something, and it's something that's managed by the team. It's not managed by your administrators, and there's a pretty hard line between your company managed projects and your team managed projects. So generally our recommendation is start with that turned off, and then turn it on if and when you have looked at it, analyzed it, taking a look at the ramifications, pros and cons, and that you've educated your users on when and how to use them, then turn it on. If you do it leave that on without educating your users, you'll have people making projects that you don't want making projects and putting important data in there that is then hard to migrate back to a company managed project later if you want to do that. So that's new in cloud. It's not available in server. It's great if you want to do a self-service model. Be aware of the concerns about that before you use it. In terms of other adjustments and challenges in cloud, there are limitations that most people don't run into, but they're there because it's a cloud platform. And what Atlassian has had to do with the cloud platform is they've had to engineer it differently under the hood in order to keep it more performant, since you're using it over the internet, and because they want to protect the performance of the server, so to speak, the servers that they're using. You have more latitude in a server and data center environment because it's yours, so they leave it more open. So you have more of an ability to do things that might negatively impact your server, but they don't want you to do that in cloud. So they put some limits. So an example might be, if you're going to export some issues, there's a limit on exporting those. You can only export up to 1,000. Now, most people aren't going to really run into that. Generally in server, the limit is set to 1,000, but in server, you can change that limit if you want to. You can move it up to 2, 3, 4, or 5,000. That's not something you can do in cloud. So just some limitations like that. In terms of Confluence, there's a couple different macros that are deprecated on the cloud, like the anchor macro isn't available in cloud. That can be an adjustment if you've got a team that makes heavy use of anchors. That's not something that we really hear about real often in terms of being a problem for companies. In terms of depending on what type of migration method you use, after you migrate to cloud, you may need to recreate some things like dashboards and filters. That's not really a big deal, since they're relatively easy to create and reconfigure. But that is impacted by what method you use. You've got a couple different methods. Atlassian provides a couple of cloud migration assistants. There's a Jira Cloud Migration Assistant and a Confluence Cloud Migration Assistant. You can use those, and actually Atlassian requires that you use those if your user count is less than 1,000. If you have more than 1,000, you can also use those, but you can do the site import method if you want. So since there's those two different options. What we've also included in our resource list are links to pages that shows you what exactly gets migrated when you use Jira Cloud Migration Assistant, what exactly gets migrated when you use Confluence Cloud Migration Assistant. You can compare and contrast that with the site import. Site import, at least right now, tends to pick up more things, but the cloud migration assistants are being improved all the time, and they're going to continue to include more and more items in terms of what they pull across. Okay. Enough with the differences. Let's look at a cloud migration roadmap. If you're looking at doing this, one of the questions that you might have in your mind is, what is this process going to look like from end to end? So this diagram here gives you kind of a high-level view. First, you're going to need to do a lot of assessments and just a lot of evaluating of your server instance. And one thing that's really important about that is all of your add-ons. You need to look at your add-ons, see what add-ons are available in cloud, do analyses around all of that so you can be aware and make adjustments if the functionality is different. Another thing that you need to do at this assess stage is to pull in your InfoSec team. You really need to get your InfoSec team involved in the conversation as early as possible. You don't want to get through 2 or 3 steps or even 4 in this migration process here on this roadmap, and then have InfoSec step in and say, okay, hey, wait a second, we gotta look at this and decide if we're going to let you do that or not. We've seen that happen. So definitely try to get your InfoSec team involved as early as you can. The next step here is planning. You're going to decide what strategy you're going to use. Not all migrations look the same. There's just a couple of different approaches. You can clean up your server instance and then migrate everything at once, say over a migration weekend. You can not clean up your server instance and just move everything over a migration weekend. Another approach would be that you don't have to necessarily move everything over a migration weekend. We've seen customers and we've helped customers move to the cloud project by project. So that case, they run their server and their cloud instances side by side. Teams move over one by one until eventually all of the teams are on cloud, and then they just quit using server. That's an approach that might be good for you. That's something you can look at when you're evaluating your strategy. Another thing you can do, and this is probably a little bit more rare, is you can start fresh. If your business is such that you don't need to migrate, and you can say, hey, let's just start using cloud instance. We'll start putting our new work and our new business in our cloud instance, and we'll finish up our work and business that's in the server and wrap those things up and just do it that way in terms of just shifting where you're working from. So in that planning stage, you're going to do that. After you've decided that, you need to start preparing, talking to people, get some a test site set up in cloud, and start just getting people ready to migrate, looking at things like how much data are you going to be moving, looking at the size so you can be aware of what you're in for and plan accordingly. After you've done that, start testing. You can spin up a cloud instance free and just start running the migration assistants and start running them and test as many test migrations as you want. Run it and see what happens. See how it works. See what works, what doesn't work, what's coming across, what isn't coming across. And you get to the point to where you've tested such that you have a process that you're comfortable with for when you want to do the actual migration. And at that point, you would migrate into what is you have set up and configured as your production instance in the cloud. And after you get to that point, you just actually do the migration. Your data and your users are moved to cloud. You resolve any cleanup issues afterwards in terms of maybe recreating some dashboards or things like that. And then you launch, let users start using it, and you sit back and celebrate. regarding all of that, there's a lot there. There's a lot in that slide and we can really only scratch the surface. A really great tool that we're providing in the resource list is a link to Atlassian's Cloud Migration Guide. That's a very lengthy, thorough, comprehensive, I don't know what to say, document. It's a group of several pages, but there's a lot of information there that you should look at. So definitely get the resources that we're giving you and take a look at that. Okay. Another question is timeline. Companies are looking at this and they're saying, how long is this going to take? Just, give us an idea. Often user count, how many users you have, can be, if users are relative to complexity, can be an indicator. So if this just gives you an idea, if you've got 100 users or less, it's possible that you could do a migration in a week. That's not real common. We don't really see that very often. You could maybe do it in 2 weeks or 3. If your user count is low and you're very limited in terms of how many projects you have and how many add-ons you've used. If you get up to 300 users, you're probably going to be looking at least a month. A month would probably still be kind of fast, but this is just to give you some ballpark ideas. You could be around a month or 2 months. If things are simple, a month might happen. You start getting closer up to 600 users, you're going to be looking at probably at least 3 months. Could be, 3 months would probably be the shortest. It could be 4, 5, 6 months. You get up to 1,000 users, you're looking at least 8 months. And you get bigger than that, you're looking at least a year, because things are probably a lot more complex. And we have done migrations at that scale, and they do take a year or more, because there's just a lot more things to take into account, and a lot more bases to cover to make sure that everything comes across properly. So we're about to wrap up here. The last question that people often ask is, okay, we're going to do a migration. What's a good way to go about managing your migration process? And so what we can do here is we can show you how Expium does it. We have companies that work with us to help them manage their migration. And what we do is we use the tools themselves. We use Jira and Confluence. And so we set up a project and we use that with the client. This allows us to be very collaborative with the customer, makes things transparent, visible. So we use that in Jira. In Jira, we use, we'll use a project, we'll use a board like this, and also use advanced roadmaps. So we have that timeline view. We also use Confluence to manage that, where we manage and maintain a lot of documentation. We have discovery. We do a lot of discovery. We have our own sort of more in-depth approach to doing assessments around the apps that a customer has. We build out our runbooks for the actual migration, and all other artifacts are kept in Confluence. So we have all that available. That's what we do, and it's something that's open and available to the customer at all times. It's basically the tool that allows us to collaborate with the customer. So that's what a management scenario would look like. With that, want to close here by letting you know that Expium has a lot of free and paid training opportunities available. One thing that you might be interested in that's particularly relevant to this topic is we have a cloud migration workshop on July 20th. It starts at 10:30 and it goes to 2:30. You can find that on our website to register for that. That's really kind of a deeper dive for companies that are really serious or on the cusp of actually doing a migration. So take a look at that if that's something that would interest you. And so with that, we'll get into some questions if we have any. One of the most common questions that happens is, how do I know if I need a partner? Can I do this myself? Very likely you will need a partner, unless your instance is really simple or you have a lot of really talented technical people. You're very likely going to need a partner. A partner will be able to answer a lot of questions, save you from having to do a lot of research. So in a lot of cases, the answer to that, do I need a partner? The answer was going to be yes in a lot of cases. Okay, let's look and see if we have any other questions here. Doesn't look like we do. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, our project coordinator who's in the control room here is going to paste those references, that resource list into chat for you if they haven't already. Grab that. Also, if and when you decide that you need a partner, Expium has worked through migrations large and small. We would be more than happy to work with you. Reach out to us. Even if you just have some questions, you want to do have some exploratory discussions, we would be happy to help you with that. So with that, we will close. We appreciate you giving us your time and attention. So thank you and have an excellent day.